Hi sir, welcome to Film Companion South.
Hi.
Thanks for meeting me today in this super hot Saturday in the great Navodaya
Yeah,
studios.
actually it rains normally.
Yeah, last night I think it rained.
Yeah,
Yeah,
usually it rains. Yeah.
yeah.
We are filming now. So.
Correct. So let me start with this question. This is actually a huge gap in your career in terms of a director. The last film you made was supposed to release, or it got a one-day release back in 2014. Now it's 2022, and that's when we're seeing the second film. I mean, the film that you're directing after that. First of all, is there any major reason for this gap?
Oh, in Malayalam, I actually work in all kinds of languages.
Yeah.
So I normally do English films also and other languages. So Malayalam films I revisit every 5 years actually.
Yeah.
You know. So it takes and comes back to that like that.
So when you say revisit, is it in your mind itself? Is it something that relaxes you? Is it something that you go?
No, actually, in Malayalam, mostly I've been making something kind of a little bit of fantasy. Whether it is, like grandmother's story, like in Anandabhadram.
Yeah.
Or Urumi is also period where you have an opportunity to create your own world.
Correct.
Not just be realistic. So, and I try to trigger it off with some kind of a connection I have with it,
Yeah.
Like Anandabhadram was about your grandmom and all that. Urumi is something where I was always fascinated with how the first, Malayali confronted a white person, things like that. And this one, of course, is very interesting because this is also, after that, I've also been offered a lot of period movies because, to create a big canvas and all that, which I thought I will take a break from with this kind of a film. So this film is something that turned out because all my classmates, we had a reunion after some 35 years from school, first standard. So they're all mostly doctors and scientists. And
Yeah.
like that,
You're the odd one out there.
Yeah, you could say that.
Yeah.
So fortunately, when we had the reunion in Kerala, Trivandrum, it was happening in a hotel which is owned by Radha. And I had acted in a film called Magarabanja with his daughter. Yeah, with her daughter. So they made sure that I had a presidential suit and everything. So it looked all perfectly done. So I actually fixed cameras everywhere. And so we all used to chill there and have drinks. And people would talk about old times, new times and all that stuff. So the script of that is a result of all this, So because we had this scientist who Dr. Kalam got and is now in Bangalore, IIT. So he was talking about artificial intelligence, and we had lots of doctors there. They were talking about their experience. So I thought it was very interesting to see this assorted kind of people together. There are some people who studied only till 5th standard, and so he was the maybe odd one out, seeing all these air marshals and all these people, but all of them on Edapoda terms. It's always fun to have that. So I wanted to create something like that. So I had the story of a scientist who comes to do some experiment which is banned there because it has to do with human people. So here these guys say, if you're not experimenting on cows and all, it's fine. People you can do things like that. So they end up making a very high-tech lab in a kawa.
Okay.
It should be a secret.
In a proper, village kind of setting.
So kawa means there they're putting columns and here they're putting wires and they're lighting lamps here. So there's an extreme contrast
Science
of people,
faith,
the guys from UK, village girl, that kind of a place. And they experiment with people. So that kind of a story it is actually. And in fact, I also cast a few of my classmates in the film.
On the film itself?
Small, good roles actually.
And it's also, of course, you made Halo, but then after that, it's one of your lighter films. So
this
is part comedy.
This is a lighter film all the time, but of course, it touches on everything, including war.
Yeah.
It predicts that it might happen. So because when you do with artificial intelligence, it's also about statistics and law of averages. So it touches everything, and then we have this fascinating actress called Manju Warrier,
of course,
who I thought had much more potential than she has shown. So I thought, let me explore those kind of hidden talents in her, which you will see when you see the film.
But sir, of course, you're one of our biggest cinematographers. Of course, you became that because of a lot of creative expression and achieving exactly what you set out to make. But then when it comes to direction, which you obviously take a break from most of the time, what is the kind of creative satisfaction you get from that aspect? Is it in some way more valuable than shooting a film?
Yeah, I think directing is a total satisfaction. It's what you're thinking. Of course, it's also about managing people. You have to manage actors, your producers, who can be very difficult. Your answerability to the financiers, and at the same time try to exercise a freedom to execute what you had in mind. Most of the time it might not happen like that, but then we have to do compromises. But it is definitely a much more satisfying experience to direct. As a cinematographer, it's a very zen quality to it. You go, you look at your lighting, you don't have to interact with people, you interact with nature, make sure that whatever you do is interesting and it elevates the film. Then you come back in the evening and then you can just recollect all your shots. There is no preparation as such about handling people and answerability and all that stuff. So it's a more zen kind of a job, cinematography, as far as I can say.
But you like the joy of both. You like the experience.
Yeah, I think it's just a different feeling, And I also do DOP for my own films because I feel that I have to give that little extra bit to make it a little, give it a little more scale maybe, give it a little more style, a little bit of aesthetics that can happen without having an interaction with another person. Of course, there are a lot of very competent cinematographers in our country, but that doesn't mean that everyone has to gel well with the other person. So I find it very easy and it's become like second nature. So I don't really prepare myself to do some cinematography special. It happens on the way. Something or other will, that side will get covered a bit.
So, but even when you're thinking about a film, as a film that you want to direct, as a script that you work on, and as a film that you want to direct, is it always like when you imagine the movie, are you imagining it to be a Santosh Sivan cinematography film?
No, I feel, see, if a music director is directing a film, definitely he will think about music, okay? As a visual person, there are times when I've tried to keep away from the visuals, you know what I mean? Because I don't want people to say, oh, it's a beautiful shot like that.
Yeah.
I don't want that. And if let alone it will happen.
Yeah.
So sometimes I restrict myself to go a little saying that it's too fancy and all that stuff. But at the same time, I think if it works for the film, then it's fine. Because cinematography is also something that should work like music, So there are times when the cinematography should not dominate. And at the point where it should dominate, it should dominate. For example, if you take a film like Roja, we have tried to withhold showing snow till the protagonist in the film, Madhu's character, actually sees snow, and that is the time when the viewer also sees the snow. Yeah. So that moment is elevated. That is only because you didn't show it off in the beginning, which was possible. So sometimes you contain yourself and not restrain yourself to make it like music. So I always think cinematography is like music. You should have your silences and have your rhythms and have everything going in a very musical way, actually. At the same time, it also try to make every frame in the film look like it's part of that film. That's how it is.
But even otherwise, sir, even creatively speaking, you're not somebody who's ever kind of followed a very predictable pattern, right? Yeah. Because generally, okay, after you become a top cinematographer, then you keep shooting ad films, then you keep kind of climbing the ladder, bigger films. Yeah. But then, I think maybe a few years before, you called from some forest outside Pondicherry when you're working with some students. I mean, I didn't even understand what you were doing. Then another time you called me, then you were showing me pictures of some terrace garden that you grew in the middle of Bombay, in a city like. So how do you kind of, do you not play those?
No, actually all this is a part of it, I don't work too much also. I don't have a large volume of work. I try to work only 6 months a year. The rest of the time I like to do painting, I like to do gardening. Actually, I have a place in Pondicherry which I'm growing a forest.
And then
that's because you do documentaries on farmers, and then you think there's nothing better than growing your own food, and so I do that. And then of course in Bombay, because I was there, I used to make my terrace a kind of a nursery for what I'll plant here. So if you plant a certain kind of plants, butterflies will come and birds will come, little birds will come. So when you come to the terrace in Bombay, in the middle of Bombay, you'll suddenly see on my terrace there are butterflies and birds and all, wild birds and all happening. So this I try to do in Chennai also. But I think this is all a part of looking at nature, learning from it and things like that. So you get to understand it a little more, you feel. Because every day morning, if you get up at 5 in the morning and walk out anywhere, wherever you are, then you see the whole world is monochrome, black and white almost. And slowly when the soft light comes, the colors pick up. And then when the bright light comes, the colors dance with contrast, So every day is like a navarasa happening with nature. So you're able to interact well with that kind of so I do this, and this has been happening with me ever since I started, not now, because I used to sketch. My grandmother used to encourage my sketching, and sketch is an original, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Of course, then your dad taught you photography, then he said the negative is original, and today we have a copy which is original on the digital platform, you know what I mean? When you say copy, digital is like lighting one lamp and another lamp, so both are same. It's not different or degrading, or a copy. This is the same. So that is happening. So I think changes will happen all the time. Film to digital and digital, I don't know from here to where, but it will keep happening. But your sensibilities and all will remain same, I guess.
But even other ways, like even the way you kind of described the 5 a.m. light, right? And even maybe if you take a look at the teaser of Inam, it's like basically bombs blasting on the side, but the reaction shots are not of human beings. It's of like ants and worms and things like that.
That's because my son is very fond of insects and everything. And he was very petrified when Diwali happens. He thinks all the bugs are going to get scared. So I try to put that into the film actually.
But then he must have gotten that genes from. I mean, obviously he got the genes from.
No, he is actually concerned about all this. So I just learned something from how to look. But because when you have a little kid or whatever, first thing you realize is that you start looking at everything from his point of view, because you don't remember what you were thinking that time. So this is a way of reminding you that you are like this, and this is how you first touched the leaf, which was having dewdrops and things. So you try to make the kid experience what you imagined you must have gone through like that.
Who would you kind of thank for giving you that kind of love for nature? Because it's very evident in your frames.
Yeah, I think it's my grandmom, my father's thing, who used to teach painting in the palace actually. So she used to bring all these calendars of Raja Ravarma and explain their stories and your first introduction into a visual language. But she stayed in Haripad, which is full of very colorful things, and you coming from Loyola School, it's very black and white almost, from the blackboards to the uniforms, and you coming and seeing this amazing explosion of colors during those 10-day festivals. Then you get into little things, and of course I had a father who would answer everything you ask, and all kinds of strange questions. Like before the rains, when I shot it, actually when I used to go through Wayanad with him, and I used to ask my dad, who made these roads? So he said, foreigners. And where are they? They are gone. Which is how I made that film. That's the source of it. So that is something. I think it's because of, and my grandmother introduced me to all the cultural things in Kerala. Like whether it is dance forms or art forms, everything they introduced me. And then I was very fortunate when I was just after Film Institute, I was very fortunate to shoot a documentary for a New York-based lady who did a full film on Kerala, calling it Journey Within a Journey, 1600. I shot that time. They had come with foreign cameramen, but because a lot of times they were not allowed into the temples, they wanted someone new, and then I got into it. So there I did this. It's very interesting you asked me this question, because after that, only about 3 years back, the film was completed.
Oh, okay.
Then they showed me the film. And then you realize that all the stuff you have done till now is very much reflected in all this stuff actually.
And it took 30 years to complete basically.
That one, yeah, because she had some personal issues, yeah.
Yeah.
So it was very strange. After so many years, you realize, but this film I shot in that film, this film, all the shots are, you feel, because that was 16mm winding camera and all that stuff. But I think the sensibility is all you could see in that actually.
What about war, sir? Because you see so many of your works, they're reflections about all kinds of war and all sides of war, right? Where do you think that part kind of came into you? Not the interest in war, but the fact that you've spent so many of your years thinking and visualizing so many different aspects of wars.
I think when I was, I used to, before I started doing films, I used to do all these small docus and things for Vivekananda Kendra. So they would send me to the villages.
Yeah.
Then I would go to a Balwadi where there are school children sitting. They're having their noon meal. I would shoot it, and then people like Tata and all will fund them for food. So I've traveled a lot of South Tamil Nadu because Vivekananda Kendra is close to that. Then
you see refugees, right? You get to see refugees there.
Normal people. Then one day I went to a place called Kulathupura, where is a Sri Lankan community, Sri Lankan Tamils. There, first time I saw these refugees. And then I became friends with them, and they told me so many stories of being persecuted and this and all that, which is how I made Terrorist as well as Inam, which a lot of their people from there only has acted also. So I got into that because of that. So this was about 30 years back. And even now, Kulathapura, you have all these people and all that. So then you started thinking, because at those days your mind is very impressionable, and when people tell you a story of what happened. And this was very interesting to me, because when I was studying in Pune Film Institute, I had two Vietnamese classmates who had participated in the war.
Oh, okay.
With America. And they would tell you so many stories. And you're sitting there when they're cooking chicken, and then they're telling about how these people came and what kind of weapons the Russians used. So early on, these are personal experience which was shared with me, which makes it more personal to you, you know what I mean? And then what I learned was that when you talk about war, it is about sweat, spit, blood, all the liquid aspect of this thing. So you try to bring that out when you film action or war.
And it's a very interesting aspect, because generally, because you're a Malayali, war is such a distant thing, right? Of course, you could have family members who were in the army, but then we are not people who have had to see the problems in Pakistan or Bangladesh or anything like that. And it's still taken up such a huge part of your filmography.
We have Kadari, we used to have violent people, but unfortunately those days, we used to follow rules. So like in the Mahabharata and all that, sunset pack up.
You cannot fight after.
So these guys came and told, these idiots don't know anything, these Portuguese people are coming and fighting at night and all that.
Yeah.
So, it was a different kind of a system actually. But I think it's interesting to see, because I think, our Ayurveda, everything grew out of attention to our physical fitness, and we are traditionally one of the best equipped to be actually fight and be in a war. And then you have the Malayali mentality also, which is amazing,
But even creatively, so this is a question I've always wanted to kind of ask you. Is there, you've been shooting for 30 years. Imagine the amount of time, actually the amount of years you've spent right behind the viewfinder. Have you ever felt at any moment the photographic equivalent of a writer's block, as in you're not able to see something new when you're looking through the viewfinder? Have you experienced something like that, like a creative block?
Not really, but you struggle, because for example, when someone like Maniratnam say that, we have to do Dalabadi in a very different way, then you do Dalabadi. Then you'll say Roja in a very different way, not like Dalabadi, okay, then you do that. Then they'll say Dilse in a very different way. Then you do Irivar, it should not be like any of the other films. So this will keep happening. So I have done maybe 6 films with Mani, but all the 6 films are very different.
Completely different.
Completely different. So that is okay. But if you look at it very closely, you will find that your signature is there somewhere. But the style can be different, But then for that it takes effort, and then more than the effort, I feel for every creative person to actually do something, that extra thing. Everything is a little extra. like P.T. Usha losing with that extra thing. You know, that extra thing is very important. So the extra thing, what you need is motivation. So along with studying the art and expressing your sensibilities, I think it's very important to keep that motivating thing very high. So when you start shooting a film, you start off dedicating it to your father or your mother. Dedicate it to someone so that you find some honesty in it. You can't steal someone's ideas and dedicate it to your father or something. So you'll try to do something your own.
Like a tribute.
Like a tribute. So you will start, then you will not feel tired. You'll always be energetic, on your toes, trying to see. So it is not like I'm just doing a work. So if you avoid thinking that it is work and they're just paying you because you're enjoying it, then I think this thing works very well. I think, yeah.
But the second somebody hires you to shoot a movie, it's not at all in that technical sense, right? It's not at all in that, okay, he'll manage the shoot perfectly, or he will he will convert text into cinema.
Yeah.
They expect art in every frame. Like they're expecting a person who thinks like nobody else thinks to kind of give
to an
you
extent,
a shot.
you can do that. And see, first you have to get the confidence of the director. That you're not purely interested only in lighting and showing off with your camera, but you're actually interested in the story and you know what you're trying to convey. And maybe if the story is very original to him, because if he has written it himself, then you try to understand more about why he is doing what he is doing, and then very easily you can add your little bit to it actually.
But do you feel that, I mean, knowing you, sir, because you have so many other creative pursuits, and you also kind of do all kinds of movies. You've never stuck to just one kind of movie. You would have done the biggest movie of your life, and the next movie will be a 15 lakh film or a 20 lakh film.
Yeah,
what probably is the costume of the previous film will be what you spend.
I like that also. I know somewhere I like that because sometimes I shoot a film which has, like this particular film, Barroz.
Yeah.
We are doing 3D also, so we need lots of lights. So you have hundreds of lights. Okay. And the next film I might do with 2 candlelights, So it also makes you interesting to be in that group and not repeat what you did for this, like that, So you get into that. Restricting yourself sometimes becomes the mother of, you have to recreate yourself. So that is also interesting.
When you kind of do those smaller films, and then you also find time to do the big ass films like the Tupaki and the Darbar.
Yeah.
First of all, let me ask you, outside of the movie, do you feel like not the criticism, but the credit that you get is somehow not the same when you do a beautiful art movie compared to a beautiful commercial movie? Do you feel people somehow don't give it the enough credit?
I think, see, when people ask me why you do a Tupaki and Darbar, because not much is expected of you also in terms of the large mass kind of a thing. But the fact is that it funds you to make your smaller films.
Yeah.
So I don't have to go and tell a producer, I would like to do an experimental film, please give me some money. So instead of that, I can spend my own money and make the own film. So I don't have any problems. This is what I do now.
Yeah.
So sometimes you do something and it is funding your other film, what you can do. So why put some producer onto it?
Yeah.
So then I don't have to answer to anyone. So I find it very convenient to shoot all these big commercial films. I know what is expected of me is to make them look good. That's about it. That's not very difficult. But maybe they have their own sensibilities and mass kind of a thing. Then and I also don't mind. I like it actually. It's not that I hate. I like doing songs, seeing the songs again, and all that. Maybe it is not a creative high, but definitely Darbar and all. After that, Rajini sir called me home. Because he also wants to look good, no? So that's how it is actually.
But I think Tupaki, at least, I don't think gets the credit it deserves, because it kind of changed the look of the mass commercial film.
Yeah.
I think at least until Tupaki, there was this fragmentation. As in, a song should look extremely colorful, an action scene should look extremely green or blue. But then there was a consistency throughout Tupaki, and there was a very Hollywood aesthetic to it.
Yeah.
And that has become the norm right now.
Yeah.
You see a lot of the aesthetics kind of boiling down to the other mass action films after Tupaki. Do you kind of agree to that?
See, someone like director Murugadas said, we need a great intro of Vijay coming. So Instead of putting smoke machine down, I put it on top and made it and emerged through that with a gun and things like that. So you can do things like that when you specifically tell me I would like to make this a dramatic shot or something. But Tupaki is interesting for me for another reason actually, because it is one of the first films to embrace digital, and that is because the story demanded that kind of candid shooting in streets without anyone knowing. So it was better to have multiple cameras, and digital cameras, even though I am a great admirer of film, digital cameras give you the kind of liberty to take different kind of cameras, like horses for different courses. So I can even put it on a cycle and shoot something, So that it offered. So that time it was not the best digital this thing, because it was purely on a card, not like codecs that we have now. But it was a basics, which is why no one was really too much into it. And also, big commercial films, when you say digital, they used to look down that time, and they even felt it was not lucky, because the small films do it. So even when I suggested to the director and the actors and all, they were very apprehensive.
I'm taking a step back.
What do you mean? And then because you're saying, they say, okay, what do you feel like? But then, of course, when it became all right and it was accepted well, then everyone, of course, did that. And I was not doing it as an experiment, because I had experimented with digital in Urumi.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
That was the first film actually, but that was tape, not even digital hard disk. It was tape on a D21 camera, because you travel so much to Japan and all that, and you are seeing still photography make such rapid progress. You knew it's only a matter of time before the technology is going to creep into the Indian cinema, whatever, which it has happened actually.
You're talking about a cinematographer who's worked 3 decades, right? Compared to the other technical forms of cinema, the learning just never stops in this, right? You have to kind of reinvent yourself. I mean, you would have reinvented yourself at least a dozen times in this, and now you're making a 3D movie, which is another reinvention.
Yeah.
So, can you ever feel like, okay, I have learned it, or I have figured it out? And even, after making so many movies, you're learning, it's like one entire new course, new MBBS that you're studying, right? When it comes to 3D.
Very true, because you have to be always updated with these things, if you really have to. See, because what we studied in the Film Institute, technology-wise, photochemistry, all is not happening. It's all changed. But all those things actually help your sensibilities and your understanding of how color functions and everything. So there's a lot of that which remains. Technology is bound to change, because now when I'm doing a 3D film, unlike other films you used maybe 2 lights, here I have to put 8 lights, because you have to create a big depth. So you can't be having a candle and walking around, all that won't happen. It has to have massive apertures, f8 and all, you have to shoot it like that. So it's a challenge, and it's very interesting when it unfolds on screen. So every shot you take is like a new beginning for you actually. So I think that is what keeps it going actually. Then what happens is that there's a blur now, because suddenly VFX is also a part of the whole thing. So you have to also understand how to execute VFX well, and do what is necessary for VFX also. So it's not just creating a beautiful frame.
It's an incomplete frame.
But understanding how to incorporate that into your frame, and being technically competent to make it fulfilling for that department. So it is also a lot of studies. So you never stop learning, like you said. I've actually done 3D course abroad and things like that. So I think this wanting to learn will never stop actually once you are in this. Once you're totally into this kind of a thing, you love learning more and more information. And then finding if this is good or this is bad. The best way to have that kind of mind is to buy a new phone and not look at the instruction manual and try to figure out all
everything.
Then your mind starts working in a very interesting way, because it will suddenly solve itself. That happens.
But when you kind of mentioned this point about a 3D film requiring so many kind of lighting, and for you it's like an extra tool, like it's like it's like one aspect of cinematography where you can bring things out and you can take things back. So as a tool, at what stage are you kind of finding yourself? Is it something that is freeing you creatively? Is it making your mind think deeper and stuff like that?
It's like reading a different author. If you are reading books, You like to read graphic novels, everything, classics, everything. So this is like reading a whole new book.
Yeah.
Because everything that you thought is, you're talking about magic realism. So that is very interesting. You know, you'll have to see everything from a child's point of view and see if it works for you. Is interesting and all that. Then on top of that, you have someone like Mohanlal directing, who himself is like a child.
Yeah.
And but he's a very, because of his vast experience, and he is also very original about his vision actually. This I know before, because when we used to, long time back itself, we used to take pictures and compete. Who's better?
Yeah.
We used to do that.
Yeah.
This used to happen also during the pandemic.
Oh,
Then he's sitting at home.
Yeah.
And he will take pictures in his house, and then I'll also take pictures. No, it's very interesting.
Yeah.
So you know that he has a visual signature. That he is interested.
Yeah.
And so this film also, you will find that whatever he is doing is very original. It is not from some other film.
Yeah.
He's not into all that. He is into, whether it's right or wrong, he wants it to be his
original.
He has his own way of telling it. So we of course have fights and all that. But that's all. But the fact is that he likes it to be like that. You know, that is very interesting actually.
Is there also the limitations of 3D? Because you said everything requires a kind of, even Jijo sir, like when I used to read a lot what he wrote about Kutichatan, he's spoken at length about how everything needs to be flat, because you can't really do a lot of the cinematographic techniques of that time, because everything needs to be focused, because 3D is so precise, right? Are you facing those kind of challenges?
That's why I'm saying that we are creating high depth of field. But if you expose something at f8, it's not like 1.2. You know, f8 means the depth will be massive. So these little things will. So that means a lot of light is necessary. That means your composition is very important. How you layer the lighting is very important. You can't go flat. You know, you have to create depth in it. And also because the subject is such, I want it to be like a painting, like a Caravaggio painting maybe. So you are inspired by, maybe because he was the one who, that painter is the first one to use the dimension of light.
Like chiaroscuro it's called, right?
He used to do that. So, and most of how we are, our imagery is influence is through paintings of that period, and we have similar costumes and things like that. So it is also new also, because it is that kind of a film. It is also has flashbacks of period. So it is that kind of a film. So it has its own challenges. But what I like is you are having given the liberty and the freedom to create your own world. It is not a realistic film like you walk in an office and there are two chairs and one table. It's not like that. So you can create your own this thing. So within the permits, then we have to do it in sets. And sometimes, you know, you have to create with lighting differences and things like that. So that's all very challenging actually. That you will see when you see the film.
Yeah, and it's like the fourth or fifth thing that you're reinventing yourself with, especially in terms of the big films. So what is next? Is there anything left for you to explore?
No. I really want to do a very interesting period film. I actually wanted to do with Kunyali Manikar, with Mammootty and all, but of course they had done it, so we didn't. There's no scope for two, which is a very expensive thing. But I would like to do a film of that scale, not Kunyali Manikar, but some other subject which is interesting and which is also talks about the hero, you know. Because I think it is when you do that kind of film, it has a breather or a freedom to go pan-India. So I really like doing films which could be pan-India, even if it's in Malayalam. So I feel that for that you need that kind of a backing of a good producer, and also that kind of publicity to get it there. But at the same time, just because you're being pan-India, you still want to retain your sensibilities and have something very unique in terms of showcasing our culture and things like that.
And it has to have that Malayali love for content. Yeah.
And not only, see, the Malayalam problem is that the Malayalis want the Malayalam film to be like the, you know, like how we nurture a flower pot inside the house. Water it, don't grow too much. Just water it there. If they want to see some tree, then they will see a Tamil film or a Hindi film or a Telugu film where the tree is outrageously grown and everything is good. But Malayalam film, I think Malayalis like the idea of putting it like in a flower pot next to the inside the house, next to the Raja Aruna painting and TV and all that stuff. I feel sometimes because we have also the budget for that only.
Thank you so much,
Thank
sir,
you
for
so
talking
much.
to me.
Thank you
Always
so
a pleasure
much.
talking to you, sir.
This is a good one actually. Funny also, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, take care.
Thank you, sir.
Bye,
Yeah.
bye, bye.